Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just toggle about here, and that should do the trick. Absolutely lovely. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you for joining me. Tom Flanagan here again on my Tuesday spot on Tune It Over. For those of you who don't know me, haven't tuned in before, I'm a physiotherapist. I've worked with Jack and some of the Tune It Over team and the Choose Health team, the Therapy Live team and the Physio Match team for some time. And once a month, Jack's asked me to come on a Tuesday and go over my take, a little bit of a different take on certain things going on in both the profession and outside the profession. A little bit more topical than, or generally topical than very much physiotherapy specific. However, having said that, I am a physiotherapist, so and very interested in rehabilitation, particularly in MSK care. So I will have a tendency and have done to link things back to that. So for those of you who are joining, thanks for coming in. Got the chat box open, so if there's anything that you guys want to chat about, or if there's anything that I say that you feel like you need to challenge, please do. Always really cool when that sort of stuff happens. For those who aren't watching live and are listening either on the podcast or after the fact, you can find me on social media, particularly Twitter. Practice Moving is my handle. So if there's anything that you want to talk through there, please do ping me a message or tag me in a comment. Been much less active over recent months, but hopefully as society opens up and the workload eases off with certain things, it'll be a little bit more easy to engage with you guys if you'd like to do so. So yeah, that's me. Like I said, if you are listening live, please do introduce yourself to me. Of course, if I know who you are, then please do let me know that you're listening and make me feel a little bit nervous and throw me off my kilter. But we do have a little bit of an agenda today. And the first one that I want to talk about are the changes in society that we've all noticed over the past few months. So the last time that I was on would have been the last Tuesday of April. And between then, so we'd just opened up to be able to go outdoors really for a week or so. And 4 weeks down the line, we're now able to kind of go into gyms normally. We're able, gym's absolutely normal for me, actually. That's probably the closest thing to normality that I found. I don't know. Malta, I bet the weather's much more lovely there than it is here. So going back to the gym, that's been awesome. Getting myself back in there, real taste of normality, which has been really cool. Pubs, so I went out and had a pint or two at the weekend indoors, and what I looked through that felt like. I've been to restaurants, inside, mixing with people and everything like that. It's been awesome. It's been a real taste of normality and very, very well timed for me. I don't know about you guys. Now, David Poulter, one of the big names on physiotherapy social media. If you don't know him, really good person to listen to, but he's just said hi from Malta. So that brings to my mind the fact that this is quite a big show that has a bit of a reach. So it might not just be people from the UK. So I'd really be interested to hear about the social changes that you guys have experienced in the UK, all very similar, well, particularly England. I know that there's some variations in Northern Ireland, in Wales and in Scotland. But it'd be really interesting to see if places like Malta, David, are behind the UK or if they're much far in front. Give me a little bit of an insight as to whether I can expect to book a trip to Malta as well. That would be really cool. One thing that hasn't changed in society is the great British weather, which has been absolutely abysmal. It really, really, really has. Again, if you are tuning in for somewhere different, please do let me know what the weather's like there. That'd be super cool. So I'll just pop that away there. So there's been loads of changes in society, and I alluded to this last time that I was on, and the way that that's impacting on my ability to do my job as a physiotherapist in MSK care. So particularly with waiting lists for care, for developing rehabilitation plans with people, because something that I really enjoy doing as a rehabilitation therapist, rehab-centered therapist, is asking people what they used to enjoy doing before their MSK problem. And I know that this is a bit reductive, but usually it's the way that I'll put it forward in the conversation. Before you hurt, what was different about life? Or a question along the lines of, if your pain wasn't there, what would be different about your life? I'd say that that's probably been, since my early days and my infant years as a therapist. So the early years as a therapist for me, and developing and trying to get my head around the simple stuff with physiotherapy, which I think I'm still trying to do. And I'd be happy the day that I feel comfortable with absolutely everything, but I don't think that's completely realistic, certainly probably not on the horizon. But you go through your early years of your therapist development, and you become a little bit more comfortable with certain things. Like this past few months has been the biggest challenge for me, and mainly because of that. My unique selling point as a therapist is I know that might sound a bit arrogant. It's not intended. It's just that I tend to kind of center these sort of questions. What would you do if you didn't hurt? My assessment around that, whereas other therapists go about things in a different way, get different results, which is really cool. Variation is massively important in a team in MSK care. But that's my thing, and it's almost been taken away. So I've been taken aback by it. So I found that really challenging. And I mentioned it last time that I was on, and I really haven't noticed a change yet, I don't think, with the answers I'll get to that question. Or it might even be I'm answering that question less because I'm not used to doing it so much. But I remember when the UK were approaching the end of the first or second sort of lockdown, the answers to that question were really quite profound, probably even more profound than they'd been in the previous 3 years, when it really became a centerpiece of my practice. Again, asking those goal-orientated, values-based questions. People were just so excited about things opening up. I think that's dropped off, and I think that's a bit of a worry and a challenge that we have on. So going to put that out to you guys there, those who are listening again, either right now or after the fact. Am I alone in facing that concern, or have you noticed that too? And if you have, and you found any ways around it, let me know, because I could deal with them, yeah? So David has just popped up that Malta has reached herd immunity with regard to the amount of their population that's vaccinated yesterday. And he's on day 10 of 14 of a quarantine. So that must be unbelievably exciting, David. Like, to be in a, because I imagine that will be close to just normality, and a really lovely country with a really lovely, really lovely weather at the moment. God, that must be exciting. I've I know that you do a lot of traveling, David, but I'm not too sure. I hope you don't ask me. You might have switched off by now, so don't worry if you have. But I'm not too sure if you if you work clinically when you go to these different countries. Is it more like educating different therapists? I'm not sure, but if you are still there, it would be really cool to kind of get an answer as to what sort of things you might expect from Malta with regard to those sort of questions and goal setting. I would find that really interesting. Again, anyone else who's listening in, I might be the only person having these concerns, but if not, and you're sharing those sort of things and do have some tactics to get around it, really welcome your input. I'm going to take that off there. See if David is around to pop something back up, which would be cool. But I want to focus on what's due to change between now and next time, and that I'll be on, which will be, just make sure I got my dates right. I will be on the 22nd of June, I believe, and that will be the day after things are due to go back to normal. The restrictions in the UK are lifted. We're talking about the start of the Euros around then. And I saw something earlier about the expectation that Wembley will be full with fans for the Euros, for the final. It's all just a bit bizarre. Going from 2 months ago, when things were super, super restrictive and the weather was pretty similar, to thinking about 6 weeks down the line, we could have normality. It's kind of strange. But a little bit of a recap on then, and I wonder if you're listening whether you expect things to go back to normal. And again, I'll leave this point now. Any comments on it? Have you seen what I've seen with a lack of almost excitement this time after coming out of lockdown, with engaging in valued activities? But what I'd like to move on to now is a topic that's more rehabilitation specific, which is my thing, yeah. And that's obviously it hasn't been going. We haven't gone back to gyms in the UK so long. Haven't gone back to the gym so long, but I don't know if I'm surprised by this or not. But I imagine I would have been when I was a younger clinician. So maybe some of our younger clinicians listening are surprised by this, like I think I would have done a few years ago. And I haven't seen that many return to sport injuries, like return to gym injuries. And maybe it's just because it's only been, a few weeks, really. And those referrals haven't come through yet. It's probably the answer. But I do wonder if by the time that I come back in next time, I'm seeing loads of Achilles tendinopathies and these overuse type injuries. I've seen quite a few more foot injuries related to running. People taking that up as a new hobby, I guess. But yeah, that elsewhere in the body, not so much. Just having a little bit of feedback from David asking way too profound question for this Tuesday. What is normal? Yeah, I think we probably need a whole day's conference to try and answer that question. And I don't feel like I've got the capacity to open that Pandora's box, David. So I'm not even going to dare. But normal is whatever you perceive it to be, I guess. It depends on the context. But so David just sharing the fact that some not great news that his mum fractured a femur 4 weeks ago, and having to advocate for her rehab and extended care. That's not nice to hear, mate. That's pretty woeful. I hope she's okay. I really do. And she's lucky to have a son who can passionately advocate for recovery. I'm sure with your specialism, expertise, and empathy for both your mum and those caring for her, she'll do really well. Sorry to hear that, mate. So on the rehab specific stuff, I'm not seeing too many return to sport injuries. Maybe it's because they haven't kind of developed yet, or they're developing now and people haven't gone to the GP to get a referral into primary care physiotherapy. And maybe I should expect to see that over the coming weeks. But I'm not sure. I wonder what that says about our sort of overarching view and control over rehabilitation, and I'll want to do more contacts and rehabilitation moving forward if we don't get that. And by that I mean, if we don't see loads of people who are just going into the gym on their own and gradually exposing themselves to activity, and they don't develop any further injury, does that offer an argument that maybe we should step back from being overly involved in rehabilitation, promote that power of permission? Here are some things to be mindful of when you go back to exercise, maybe some things to be cautious over when your body feels in certain ways, and ways to ease off, and times to push forward, but kind of saying, right, okay, I'm going to leave you to it, as opposed to booking in a few weeks down the line. Granted, there's no perfect answer for that, but I do see a lot of variation of that in physiotherapy, where some clinicians really want more contact, more control. Some clinicians are, for whatever reason, more happy just letting the patient crack on their own. I think that varies time to time. But I wonder if we don't see an influx in overuse injuries when patients are leading their own recovery, does that throw a little bit of question into whether we're overly involved in rehabilitating, particularly my clientele, my patient group, who are those patients in primary care. So not the most conditioned people, not your weekend warriors, certainly not athletes, but are engaged in an exercise. So Francine Farrell on LinkedIn, I think that is, just popped up that. So Francine, I hope it's Francine and not Fran. So Francine has posted, as you should see on there, return to rugby training, return to dance overload injuries in the private sector. Yeah, so I think I answered that question as you were typing it down and sent it in before I saw it, Francine. So I work, should have said it at the start really, shouldn't I? Not on my game today, Francine, apologies. So I work predominantly in primary care MSK. So I work in a CAT service at the moment, so orthopedic triage. Either patients who have seen a GP and the GP feels they need extended care or extended pathways or progressed pathways of care for MSK problems. For example, the obvious one being OA hip, and the GP feels like they've exhausted all the early conservative management options to them, and they want to see an orthopedic surgeon. I might see that person to go through an assessment, differential diagnosis, maybe arrange imaging, and discuss the pros and cons of going down an orthopedic route. Also, I'd say that's probably the vast majority of the caseload, but we will also see a fair percentage of patients who have been through the physiotherapy service in primary care who haven't achieved their goals, are still struggling, and then they get referred through to sometimes just to talk about, to get a second opinion, to get another perspective on the care, on the diagnosis, alleviate any concerns of the therapist or the patient, or also that same sort of thing that I said a moment ago with the GP. I imagine you probably already know all that, Francine, but I should have said this sort of stuff at the start. But yeah, so I work predominantly in the public sector. I do also do some work for England Athletics on event days with Stuart Butler and his team. But with COVID going on, that's been a bit well, it hasn't happened so much, right? Cool. Big thumbs up from Francine there. Cool. I imagine, that's the thing. Being in the public sector, though, these sort of things might take a little bit longer. I'm just curious as to whether they will they end up coming in, or will they manage this themselves? Not sure. I'm genuinely not sure either way. But I think it'd be really interesting, because I think that my assumption historically, and that's set by the culture of the profession, we sort of expect patients not to do so well with this. But this has probably been, there's loads of really interesting things happening in society that impact on our approach to rehabilitating people. And that's one of those really interesting things to see what could happen. But yeah, are we right to take an overarching and heavily involved approach in or place in a person's rehabilitation, or if these people who are returning without much guidance, if they do pretty well, does that pose the question, should we be less involved? Maybe I'll touch on that sort of end of July time. We'll see. But on a career-specific note, I'm just due to change employer, so maybe my focus will be changed, and so much going on with a new job role. Maybe I won't have that. I won't have that question in my mind, ingrained so heavily in my mind, Francine. But yeah, so I'm going to be going to a new job, and I'm going to be moving from an independent provider of primary care treatment or primary care services to do an FCP and same sort of orthopaedic clinics for an NHS trust. And this is the first time that I've changed employer for 3.5 years almost. I'm a bit nervous about it. And I wonder, does anyone have any tips on managing that transition from two quite different types of employers? That would be really cool. So I'm always looking for pearls of wisdom when I get a chance to speak to like-minded people. But I'm really excited by this. I find the changes in the NHS extremely exciting. So with integrated care systems coming in, I was listening to, so I have an Apple phone. So this might not work if you don't have an Apple phone, but when I was preparing to make the change, and also because of my university studies, I've been trying to pay attention to changes in the way that physiotherapy or MSK care is provided in the NHS. And I came across this really cool podcast, and all I searched for was MSK, integrated care systems, NHS integrated care systems. And there's a podcast that's led by a few GPs on there, and I couldn't have been more excited by the changes and the drivers for these changes that are happening in the NHS. The last time that I worked in the NHS, which was probably 5 years ago, there's real heavy governance, and which is really, really cool, absolutely necessary, and the foundation of a lot of the successes in the NHS. But also, because things are so watertight, are quite often a critique that's thrown towards NHS providers is things take too long to implement. But listening to this podcast and listening to changes with first contact physiotherapy, I'm really excited by the a word. I don't think it was anarchy, but it was sort of it was. It was the thought of listening to these GPs and specialist nurses was the fact that the NHS, to achieve the 5-year forward view, or to go along with it, we really need to innovate quite heavily, and we need to rock the boat a little bit. So I'm super excited about going from an independent provider who are known for doing that and do that pretty damn well quite a lot of the time, to an NHS organisation who are a much bigger organisation and have this sort of newfound scope to be a bit more creative. I find that really exciting. So Francine, just coming back to me on the earlier point, I think it is putting something pretty cool up. The level of involvement required always be, yeah, it always absolutely is. I just wonder if we lean too heavily towards, Francine, if you're sort of on the fence, maybe historically I've sort of said, right, okay, if I can't make a definitive decision, or one that I'm completely confident with, I'll be a bit more risk averse and I'll have a bit more control over that patient's recovery or rehabilitation. And the way that might look is I might book an extra contact in their rehabilitation, and I might do that sooner. Maybe it's just me, but I think that maybe that will change. Maybe I'll feel a little bit more comfortable kind of giving the patient that chance to just say, right, okay, do you want to lead this a bit more yourself when I'm a bit more on the fence? Easier said than done in practice, isn't it? Because it's never that black and white. But I wonder if it'll change my behaviour. I hope it will. It should do, right? But let's see. Maybe in July I'll just completely evade the question. just pretend I never brought up the point. But I'm super interested to see whether it will do. Well, we got so I'm changing employer, and I just wanted to point out the integrated care systems for anyone who's not listening, or anyone who's listening who doesn't work in the NHS, or maybe works in the NHS but are in the coal mine and front line in the trenches, and they're not really having the opportunity to hear much about the potential changes in the NHS on the horizon. This podcast was awesome, really, really awesome. Like I said, if you search on the Apple Podcast app for NHS Integrated Care Systems, a few come up. It's just got the NHS logo. It's run by a few GPs. It's absolutely cool. Gave me loads of confidence about the changes moving forward, and kind of pumped me full of life and energy. So I'm really excited. Final point from me is, over the next few months, there's loads of things going on. Therapy Live, always got to mention it because super excited. The caliber of speakers and the fact that it's free is so exciting. So next time in June, I think I'll probably be touching base on some of the talks that I found really cool and really benefited from. And then after that, want to get some people on. Marhan Kohli, who runs the Wellness Puzzle. I want to have Marhan back on. There's a few other clinicians who we're talking about getting on to talk about their research and things that maybe, well, certainly haven't been on my horizon, that have been quite interesting. Things like acceptance commitment therapy, things like a lot of pain focused types of interventions that I want to get more comfortable bringing into the centre of my practice. The other thing that I'm super passionate about is looking towards, for want of a better word, rehabilitation for frailty. So I'm hopefully got a few people in the pipeline throughout from sort of July towards the end of the year to talk about, again, their researches, their differences in the way that they approach MSK care, and things that we might be able to take. A few burning questions in my head I wanted to ask for some time. So hopefully we'll have a little bit of a plan moving forward, and I'll be able to share that with you next time in June. But in the meantime, have a great month. Stay well. If you feel confident, if you feel able, get yourself out and venture into society. Francine and David, thank you for getting involved today. It certainly makes my life a lot easier. And I really do like getting other people's takes on it. And David, I hope your mum does really well. I'm sure she will with you advocating for her recovery. But I'll leave it there. All that I have to say is thank you ever so much. Stay safe. Hopefully we get a little bit of a change in the weather, and I will see you towards the end of June or Therapy Live, 11th of June. If you haven't got your ticket, what are you waiting for? Get yourself out there and get your ticket. Yeah. But I'll leave it there. Thanks again for getting involved, and have a great month.